Today on Off the Hinges, relax, pour yourself a drink, and unwind from your week as I take the next 20 minutes to answer your questions and share stories about this week's trade. I'm joined by a special guest, and I have my whiskey in hand. I'm so glad you made it. Are you ready? Let's slide into the vault.
Happy Friday. I'm going to take my first sip, and I'm so excited for people to hear from you because we're literally other sides of the world. So I'm so thankful you're here. It's quite a feat for us to manage this schedule wise, but I would love for you to just introduce yourself to our guests.
Sure. So I'm Diana Stepner. I'm in San Francisco. So, yes, halfway around the world. And my background's in product management. I was a product leader for over 20 years, leading global teams. And I just found over time that what really gave me the most excitement was helping people in my team be able to step up, be able to exceed their expectations, be able to just see them, grow and develop and, turn into the person that they wanted to be. And so earlier this year, I went from, coaching just as part of my leadership job to coaching full time. So my focus is on coaching emerging and seasoned product leaders.
There's so many different, I think, virtues or topics I could have pegged to you and would have been fitting, like zest. But I'm excited for perspective with you because you bring a good perspective and you bring a different perspective, which is it'll be a fun thing to explore together. But before we dive in, let's do the top three. What are you thankful for this week?
Yeah, so for me, it may sound kind of, cheesy, but for me, it's always my clients. And so I have a client who I met through a mentoring platform and was helping him, and he got a new job. And so we were catching up and just, touching base on how he can, continue to develop. And he's like, I want you to know that I signed up for a mentoring program so I could mentor others. He's like, you helped me so much. I want to give back. And so that to me was like, oh my God, heartbreaking, all of that stuff. So when I see the people that I work with want to give back because they've been encouraged by what, we've partnered on together. So that to me is really, yeah, what I'm thankful for.
I love it. That's great. And you are really good at encouraging people. So makes sense. Okay. Number two, what is something new that you learned this week?
Yeah, so I'm writing a book with two other people. And
Mhm.
so I'm learning about the book writing process. And so we got our manuscript to look over. And so I'm just learning how to, go through things and, see, where we could make things tighter. But it's just been really interesting and exciting just to learn how you take insight and information, put it into, chapters and then have it blend together and then edit it to make it even more concise. So that was part of what I learned this week.
Cool. Am I allowed to ask for the listeners what the book is about, or is this like a big reveal that's really super secret that nobody can know?
No, it's totally cool. So it's about product leadership and product management over the years
Cool.
and how it's changed and how to be, I'm going to call it future ready, because product management is not something that stands still. It, definitely changes with the times, the economy, with technology, and so just helping people be future ready.
Number three, how do you hope to grow as you rest and reflect? Hopefully, rest and reflect heading into the weekend.
Yeah, for me, it's partly having conversations like this because I love being able to learn, from other people, from yourself. And so what I've done is, built on the foundation of coaching that we have from the College of Executive Coaching.
Mhm.
And I'm starting to consume information, participate in other coaching programs.
Yeah.
And so I signed up for Lighten Your Load, which is with David Drake. And so
Mhm.
that starts later today. And so just learning how to think of coaching from a variety of different lenses and how can I blend them together to be able to, work with my clients.
Yeah. That is so fitting for today and perspective. And I would say that, yeah, this whole coaching journey is really enlightening for, I think, the perspective that coaches can offer. Because everyone has a perspective, but I think it's really useful to just be able to offer a different perspective to someone through whatever they're journeying through. and you're really gifted at that. So I'm excited. Let's dive in. First one out the gates from Lynn's. She says, who or where do you turn to when another or an outside perspective is needed? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, my mind immediately goes back to coaching because I took the accelerated starter with CEC, and to be able to have an immediate community of these 12 people who you spent 5 full days with, to me just is very much a sounding board, a foundation. Whenever I have questions or I feel like, oh my god, I did this, maybe I should have done that, I reach out to them. And so it's having that community. And I'm also part of a coaching corner community, so I've got a lot of coaches that I can reach out to beyond the program. And so when I need that advice or that guidance, I go to the communities. I obviously go to my husband, I go to my friends, but I love having that experience of working with other people who are going through a similar journey or have gone through a similar journey or about to, because
Right.
there's so much more grounding, I guess, that
Yeah.
we obtain. Yeah.
Yeah. And I agree. It's through whether it's CDC or just whatever cohorts or groups that you're going through a new learning experience with someone who's experiencing it at pace with you. I
Yeah.
think those perspectives are really cool because they're bringing in their own filters, their own experiences,
Yeah.
both past and present. And then when those blend together, it's really cool. It makes it really life giving to be able to share those things together. Like this. This is exactly what we're doing. And it's really pretty radical. It's fun.
Oh, yeah. And then
Yeah.
I just, those one of the 8,000 reasons I love coaching. Yeah, you described it perfectly.
I will not ask you to name all 8,000. But Alana, who is another fantastic friend, and she asked, how do you envision and choose your next best step? Which, side note for all the listeners, when we were talking, so I coach Alana, but she also, it's sort of ironic that I coach her because she's one of the dearest friends that I probably seek for her perspective and wisdom on things. Just a really phenomenal colleague. But as we were talking about this upcoming episode and we were having a coaching session, we discussed how we envision things and next best steps. And then it sort of worked itself out into the conversation of perspective. And we both sort of had this aha moment of like, that is a fantastic question for perspective. So that's sort of the backdrop for you and the
Oh, wow.
listeners. But yeah, how would you respond to that? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I wish I could say what the future holds. Maybe I do or don't. But right now, what I've been focusing on is small steps. And so being able to work through the items that are top of mind today. And so, for example, the book is what I think about for the future. I think about, how to help my coaching clients, in the future. I think about studying for the ACC exam. So right now, the future is not as far out as I would have historically thought about. As a product manager, product leader, I was always thinking 3 to 5 years out. But
Right.
now, because I want to continue to grow and evolve and I want to celebrate along the way, I'm doing more tiny steps and
Mhm.
letting them guide me to where ultimately I'm going to go. I
Yeah.
mean, for me, it's one of the things that I really espouse is putting people first. And so my long term would be, having more product leaders, product managers realize if you treat your team like people as opposed to cogs or components or transactions, you can have a company that's much more, human centric, much more
Yeah.
considerate, and has a culture where people really want to give their all. And I think that benefits the company, the employees, the customers across the board.
We could camp there for so long, but for the sake of time, I won't. But yes, I give you a Siskel and Ebert 2 thumbs up on that one. I totally agree.
Thanks.
And our younger listeners probably have no idea what I just said to them, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Uh,
Exactly. I mean,
that was a shout out. That was a throwback there. From Remy, he asks, do you think our perspective can change through experiences, or do you think we are set in our way of thoughts and beliefs? It's a really good question. What do you think?
yeah, I'm a big fan of growth mindset. And so I do believe we can always grow, change, evolve. And I think that's a good place to be because I always want to think people can get better. I always want to believe that we can explore what we don't know today, but maybe around the corner. And
Right.
so I always lean into that growth mindset. So to answer his question, I do think that we constantly and can grow and evolve, but I also think it's a choice you need to make. Some people will just stay in a comfort zone, and that may work for them, but at least for me and others that I've met where we've just resonated, we're always trying to do and be more.
I'm going to answer you briefly because I do have a thought on this.
Perfect.
You know, that was a really well framed question, but it caused me to go a couple different directions. So I'm going to respond to him with a question first, and I'll give a quick pregnant pause so that everyone can maybe take a second to answer it for themselves, and I'll share my thoughts. So, first of all, I would ask everyone, how do you define perspective individually and as a group? And I'm just going to go silent for a second. So, think about that. Jot it down or just fast forward me until we talk again, but I'll give you a few seconds. So, the reason I ask that, Remy, when you ask, can your perspective change through experiences? Are you set in a way of thoughts and beliefs? And without getting overly nerdy or psychology rooted on this for you, there is some nuances on words and how we define them. I'll just say that, regardless of how you want to define it for yourself or others. So when you say a perspective through experience, yes, absolutely. And then you talk about beliefs, and it caused me to think two things because people will confuse similar ideas that actually have a little bit different meaning and application. One is perspective, one is commonly referred to as whether it's a worldview. A Marxist would call it an ideology. A social scientist would call it a system of values. But sometimes people will interchange beliefs and perspective as the same exact word, and sometimes they may not mean the same exact thing. So they're related, but a worldview might be a life perspective or a larger view on things, and a perspective in the moment may be very different. So I totally agree with Diana, not just because she's my guest, but I think you're right. There is always an opportunity to transform and to grow and to learn. That may not always mean that a core belief or value system is radically shifting, but I think it's healthy in your experiences to challenge both your perspective and your values. Because if it's a thought without action, I don't know how practical that is. If it's an action that's never challenged, I don't know how real life it is. So Remy is a pro footballer or soccer player. He got signed a couple of years ago to play for an English Premier League team. He's a client of mine, and he's a fantastic dude. So Remy, for you, if you thought about a play in soccer, that might be your perspective or your ideas of it. Then when you go out and you practice with your team, just running drills, that might be some action. But if you never run those drills opposed and then actually never test them out in a match, I would say I don't know how strong they would be. But then when they stand the test of time and then they end up in successful victories or wins in the win bracket, then you might be able to hold on to those perspectives as valid. So in life, I just think that's a good way to approach it. It's good to have an idea, but you need to act it out. And if you act it out without any confrontation or challenge, I don't know how strong that's going to be. So I think you need your perspective to be challenged. And you also probably need to challenge some beliefs every once in a while and see, do I actually really believe this in practice?
Yeah, I like your expanded framing of the question. And I think it's always interesting to listen into or tune into your first response. There may be just bits and pieces that we want to fine tune, and
Right.
that could give us a new perspective, just, doing something different in the morning or, saying hello to people that, you may walk by but have not reached out to. All those
Mhm.
little micro moments that we can take during our day, if we just shift one or two pieces, our perspectives may change because we may end up in a path that we hadn't explored before. So I think that's
Yeah.
exciting. I totally
Yeah.
agree that it's like a little bit scary sometimes, but I think that opens up opportunities and helps people be able to see not only their potential, but what they could create with the people around them.
So Bobby Sue asked, because our perspectives are filtered through all of our life experiences, what can we do to ensure our perspective is the best for the situation?
Yeah, knowing Bobby Sue, I have a feeling she has a very, very appropriate, inspiring answer. I mean, for me, when I'm thinking about the question, I wish I, I wish I always knew what was best, or, to have that perspective that helps me tune into the best. And it's something I'm working on. I mean, for myself to determine what's best for me, but when I have a new client or when I'm working with a client, what we determined was best, in our prior session may change dramatically in the next session because what is best, I think, often is informed with things you've encountered today, interactions that you may have had. So I think that that wording of, is best for the situation is changeable, it's flexible. And so I think that's something important. But I think going back to like the grounding of it, I mean, you want to have some self-awareness so that you can understand, to go back to Remy's question, where are you just kind of blindered and just going forward versus where could you take a more expansive view? So I think if you take that more expansive view, your definition of what is best may change. But similar thing, I think people are always part of an ecosystem or a team or a group, even if it's just your family, you're working or with others. And so the perspective of what is best also has to lean into empathy to be able to understand not just for you what is best, but how do your actions affect or impact those around you. So I think
Right.
that self-awareness, that empathy is really, really good. And then the other piece is just that adaptability. And I think it comes a lot from being open to feedback, being able to take on board what others have said, or even just how they're, visually coming across. And that
Right.
can also inform what is best too.
The empathy drives my mind to a couple of virtues or characteristics, if you will, that I find really closely connected with perspective. And I think out the gates, number one, which thankfully is going to be our next topic, social intelligence is probably one of the most closely correlated virtues or strengths that I would connect to a perspective, to having a healthy perspective. Because it takes a socially intelligent person to be empathic and to actually be an active listener to informed, wise counsel and perspectives around them to help give those small rudder steers to maybe their perspective. As we go through these things, you and I have both been familiar with the VIA strengths profiles and things of that nature that you can use. And I really like the way they frame some of their virtues and strengths from a balance of how you can apply that. So if you look at the VIA strengths assessment, which I use with my clients, and I know you've gone through that before as well, it says an overuse of perspective looks overbearing. An underuse of it looks very shallow and disinterested. And a balance is providing a wider view through your experience and wisdom. What are your thoughts on that sort of balancing scale of this virtue?
Yeah, I totally agree. I think any strength can become a weakness if it's overused or applied in a way that suppresses or puts down other viewpoints. So I think it's a really good one to have, perspective around yourself and your impact on others. And again, to understand and appreciate your strengths, but not to over apply them or use them to smother others.
As we close this out, so many thanks to you. I hope you have a fantastic weekend. And before we sign off, as always, for all the listeners who ever may listen in now or in the future, I'm really thankful you're here with Diana and myself. But this is most important to me for my wife and my three little girls, and to sort of leave a legacy of the way that I view things with those that I glean their perspective, like you and others. So to Laura and Aria and Alessia and Karina, the crazy little purple minion ladies that I get to do life with every day. I love you all so much, and I'm so thankful that I have such dear friends like Diana who can share her perspective with you all and hopefully give you some value as you walk through life. So Diana, thank you so much. And to all of you, have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Go apply some perspective. Cheers.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Off the Hinges. Don't forget to follow Foundational Coaching on your favorite social media platforms. Kick off your Saturday with me tomorrow morning at Coffee and Reflections on Substack, where I'll share my deepest reflections and most personal stories on the weekly virtue. I'm honored to be a part of your story today, and I'm proud of your growth, my friend. I can't wait for our next time together, exploring the vault.